Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our fourth and last Migration Outlook webinar. So we have viewers from all over the Philippines. Hello po. We also have viewers from Japan, UAE, Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Singapore, Sri Lanka, USA, Australia, Macau, Italy, Vietnam, and Germany. So hello, everyone. I am Melissa Garadiles, an assistant professor from Ateneo de Manila University. I am also a volunteer psychologist at Ugat Foundation. I will be moderating today's webinar along with Dr. Marla Asis. So the Migration Outlook webinar series is brought to us by the University of Hong Kong and the Scalabrini Migration Center and in cooperation with the Episcopal Commission for the Pastoral Care of Migrants and Itinerant People. This webinar series is also supported by the University of Hong Kong's Knowledge Exchange Initiative, which seeks to share research findings to the public and to use these research findings to create impact in society. The goal of the Migration Outlook webinar series is to provide information to OFWs and their families, information that may help them manage the many challenges they may be experiencing due to the COVID-19 pandemic. The information consists of stories and insights from OFWs and their families themselves, the academe, and practitioners from public and private sectors. Our webinar today is entitled Agriculture is Calling, Prospects for OFWs. We all know that this pandemic has led to the repatriation of thousands of OFWs, many of whom have no jobs waiting for them in the Philippines. OFWs who remain abroad are also affected. Some are unsure of how stable their jobs are, whereas others have been earning less than before the pandemic happened. One of the ways to support OFWs is through better and more employment opportunities. One such opportunity is in agriculture. Agriculture has the potential of long-term employment and source of income for OFWs and their families. Agriculture also has long-term effects to the Philippine society at large in terms of food security, rural development, and poverty reduction. Today, we will discuss agriculture as an option for OFWs. We have speakers who are engaged in agriculture. We have academicians, advocates, and government officials. We will be using a combination of Filipino and English languages. For statements in Filipino, we will provide summaries in English so that viewers who don't understand Filipino may understand what is being discussed. Feel free to write comments and questions. We will try to read as many comments as we can throughout the webinar, and we will try to answer as many questions as we can later during the open forum. I will now introduce my co-moderator, Dr. Marla Asis, who will introduce our speakers. Dr. Marla Asis is the Executive Director of the Scalabrini Migration Center. Dr. Marla and SMC have conducted many research, including recent studies on agriculture and rural development. Hello po, Doc Marla. Good afternoon.
Hello, good afternoon, and thank you very much, Melissa, for the introduction. And I'd also like to say thank you to our online participants for joining us. We are particularly happy because a lot of the participants in this webinar are OFWs and family members of OFWs. So we take that as an encouraging sign, and we hope that you will find this webinar useful. So by way of introduction, I would just to mention a few things. The role of agriculture in providing food on the table and the broader issue of food security have been highlighted during this pandemic. In our back to basics, pared down lifestyle, food is a must-have that we cannot do without. In this webinar, we focus on the investment and livelihood prospects in agriculture, which, as Melissa has mentioned in her introduction, which may have the possibility to offer options to repatriated OFWs in search of alternatives, and hopefully also as an invitation to OFWs who continue to work abroad. We are aware that investing in agriculture does not figure very much in the plans of OFWs. When OFWs are asked about their future plans, Many would say that they would like to have a business upon their return to the Philippines. Like return intentions, however, business plans tend to be fluid and open-ended. Basta, may plano na magnegosyo pero marami pang mga detalye na hindi na-fill in. So as we have heard in the previous webinar, the journey of Ellen Elecanan from OFW to entrepreneur was a long process which included financial preparation, attending various training programs while she was still in Singapore, getting advice from the Department of Trade and Industry and the Department of Science and Technology, and even when her bakery business already took off, she did not stop in investing and innovating to keep her business thriving. So I'd like to request maybe if the slides can be shown. And I would just like to mention some highlights and some research findings on return migration to also put into context the discussion that we will have this afternoon. The next slide, please. So first, let me mention some highlights from the 2018 National Migration Survey. Among others, the NMS, the 2018 NMS has a portion on return migration. And what it says is that about half of international migrants who return to the Philippines have experienced difficulty upon returning to the home country. And the one thing that they had a lot of difficulty with was finding employment. It's also very interesting to highlight that very few of the migrants received any government support for their return or upon their return to the country. And I'd also just like to highlight one final finding there about the fact that more than 7 in 10 migrants reported that their financial resources were quite okay upon their return to the Philippines, which, as we will see later on, is quite a big contrast when we consider the repatriated OFWs. Next slide, please. We also had some research that looked into the impact of agricultural policies on migration, and on the other hand, also the impact of migration on agriculture. In terms of the impact of agricultural policies on migration, there was some evidence that agricultural policies, particularly those that have to do with agricultural subsidies, were the ones that seemed to have some impact on reducing the need to immigrate. If we look at the other side of the coin, that is the impact of migration on agriculture, this is where we also found some discouraging finding. According to the data that we have collected, households with returned migrants are not very likely to invest in agriculture. And so we see that as a main challenge because it seems that the reluctance to invest in agriculture is connected with this idea that agriculture is largely seen as subsistence living rather than a business and investment opportunity. Next slide, please. Now we turn to some findings from the survey of repatriated OFWs that I also mentioned the last time. And this one, it is based on 285 respondents. So this is very specific to the recent arrivals, those who had returned to the Philippines because of COVID-19. So let me just review the responses to the plans that they had in the next 3 months. So we basically focused on their most immediate plans. And as you can see there, about 22% said that they had no idea about what they were going to do in the next 3 months. And what is interesting, as I had also pointed out the last time, is that there is about an equal proportion of respondents who said that they will start a business, that they will try to look for local employment, and that they will also try to look for overseas work. And I have highlighted there in red that the least proportion of respondents said only 3.6% said that they would consider farming. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Thank you. We also asked them about what kind of assistance they would need. And actually, we asked respondents to name at least 3 types of assistance and support that they would need. And these are the topmost answers. The number 1 item there is capital for business, which was mentioned by 59% of the respondents. And I'd also like to point out that there was also quite an interest in terms of receiving training and advice, specifically business advice and upgrading skills, no? Each of which garnered 26%. Next slide, please. Can you turn to the next slide? Yes. And then I think this is the very last slide because this gives us an idea of the source of support. Where did respondents, where would respondents rely for support and assistance, no? In how they would rebuild their lives after repatriation. And it's interesting to note that most of them said that they would rely on their own efforts. There was also quite a large number who said that they would rely on family. And of course, there's also the reliance on God. And among the government agencies, OWA was the only one that was mentioned. I think that's the very last, no? Thanks very much. So for those who are searching, therefore, for options during this pandemic, and even after the pandemic, and for those who continue to work abroad, for those who are planning to return, we hope the insights and experiences of our sharers and resource speakers today will be useful. We will divide our conversation into two parts. First, we will hear from an OFW family and a young agripreneur about their experiences, and this will be followed by an exchange with our resource speakers. I'm not yet sure if Miss Gina Delgado has already come in. Okay, so
Yes.
she's already.
Hello.
Hi, yes.
Good
So,
afternoon.
hi Gina, very glad that you
Hello,
could.
Marla.
Yes. So first, I'll introduce both our speakers. First, I'd like to introduce Mrs. Gina Pomida Delgado. She has worked in Italy for more than 20 years. She returned for good in 2015 while her husband remained in Italy and he continues to work there. Their children were born in Italy, but they grew up in the Philippines, with Gina visiting them every year. She and her husband were very clear about their goal in returning to the Philippines, so they started investing while they were both working in Italy. Among others, they decided to invest in agriculture, and we will hear more about this. In 2019, Gina's family was adjudged by the Overseas Workers Welfare Administration as the most outstanding OFW family of the year in Region 8 in the land-based category. Presently, she is one of the staff of the Commission on the Pastoral Care of Migrants and their families in the Diocese of Borongan. Our second sharer, our second sharer's decision to go into farming runs counter to the trend of young people leaving agriculture. So I'd like to introduce Mr. Rude Concepcion II from Kawayan, Isabela. Rude has been involved in agriculture since he was a child, and his interest and knowledge about agriculture was enhanced when he joined the 4-H Club. It is actually the oldest youth organization in the Philippines. He qualified to be part of the Young Filipino Farmer Leadership Program training in Japan, batch 2017. Upon returning to the Philippines, he continued farming. He became very active and he became president of the 4-H Region 2 Federation, and he became a national officer of the same organization. I wonder if people know what 4-H means. So maybe Ruth can also say something about what are those 4-H's. No? He is one of the founding members of the recently launched Agricultural and Fishery Ruthpreneur Council, or AFYC. Okay? So first siguro, sa kwentuhan, I'll first have a conversation with Mrs. Gina Delgado. Okay? So, Ms. Gina, I wonder if there are a few more things that you would like to share with us about your family. Kumusta po kayo ngayon? Gina?
Mabuti po. I'm well. Hello, Miss Marla. Thank you so much for inviting me into this conference. Well, thank you so much all that I'm well in spite of this pandemic condition. Yes, I worked in Italy for 27 years. So it's more than 20 years. In 27 years, then I came home for good last 2015. Then I left my husband there. Now he's finding hard with his work because the hotel he was been working has been closed since March, and now they have not yet uh, take their salary since January, and many uh, other other benefits that they they will take, and he's not only the one who is affected, but also some other Filipinos who have been working in that hotel. Actually, my husband has been working in that hotel for almost, it was almost 21 years. So it's so sad to say of what had happened, but of course we understand because it's not only in Rome or in Italy has been affected, but this is affecting the whole world.
How is he getting support and
Then,
assistance?
yeah, yes po.
How
Sorry.
is he? Yeah. How is he get? Oh, one moment. How is he
Yes.
getting support and assistance, ma'am? Yung husband po ninyo.
Now, actually, he was so lucky because the government only has given them an assistant only for 1 month, and now it has stopped. So actually, he has been so lucky that he find a work taking good care of an old person. So at least the her what is his board and lodging is has been covered, uh, and that he has been given only a small amount of salary, but we are so thankful about this. So now he's waiting. So with the other employees that they will be given of what is to be given to them by the employer, or else they will fight it through legal actions. And then I really choose good also. So maybe I'm one of the lucky person who choose to return home before this pandemic, because I was able to stay with my children since 2015. Of course, they're already big. My oldest is already 22 years old, and my youngest is 16 years old. Actually, my youngest also has been a student at St. Paul University in Manila, and I was able to talk him with his other cousins before the lockdown in Manila. So we are all home.
Okay, that's
Then
good to know. Yes. Okay
yes,
po. Yeah,
yes,
yeah, Miss Gina, I just wanted to find out if you could explain a little bit, because you said that you and your husband were very clear that you will really return to the Philippines. You could actually have stayed in Italy because your children were born there, but why is it that you have this really great interest to return to our country? Marami kasi sa mga Pilipino, they
uh,
chose to remain in Italy,
yes,
and
yes, yes,
become Italian
yes.
citizens. Yes.
Ever since we got married there in Italy, since the children were still little, we really have that goal, and we really talk about it only to
Mm,
return home. We did not invest in Italy, unlike other
mm,
families who got their other members of the family and they buy this house, they loan this, or what they lease some houses. But we just put in the bank, and then because we have a plan only of going home, because we know that to be home, we would be more maybe safer for our old age and for the cultural advantage
mm.
of the children.
Okay, thank you po. So before returning home, and even while both of you were together working in Italy, you already started to invest here in the Philippines, no? Um, yes, yeah.
Yeah, yes
Can you,
po.
yeah, can you tell us po why? Because you have also other businesses, but you also decided to invest in agriculture. Bakit po napili nyo
Uh,
na mag-invest in agriculture?
Actually, we also put a part of what we have, because actually we have a wide land.
Mm,
We inherited from my parents,
mm,
and we
okay.
also bought a land. So we already, and because also from my grandparents, we have seen that agriculture is really a well returning of investment. What do we call this? A return of investment business or livelihood. We have seen it already from my grandparents, because my grandparents under my mother's side were farmers. So
Mm-hmm.
in that. but they have only at that time they have only the traditional farming. So by our own first, we try to have already the modern. We bought some
Mhm.
tractors, some other things in order to have a more modern way or to have more harvest
Okay. Can you tell us po about your
way
farming
of
project?
farming.
Miss Gina, can you tell us about your farming project? What do you plant? What do you cultivate? And you mentioned that you
Sorry, I can't
introduced.
hear.
Hello,
Yes
can you
po.
hear me better? Yes. Can you tell us about your farming project, what you cultivate? And you said that you introduced some modern ways of practicing agriculture. Can you elaborate? Can you hear me, po? Oops, I don't think she can hear me.
Yes, because yes po. Now, yeah,
Okay.
it's
Yeah.
clear. Before, during my at the time of my grandfather and through my parents, they were just using this the traditional way, the
Mm,
carabao just the one clearing the land, the a series of carabaos clearing the land, the plow, the traditional way of using the plow. But now we don't have this anymore. The plow, we already have the tractor, everything that is already modern to use in clearing or in preparing the land for
mm,
planting the palay.
I see. Okay. So you grow rice po. You grow rice. Are there other crops that you grow or you
Yes,
focus
yes,
on
yes.
rice?
No, no. We focus on rice. Only the
I see.
other plants are only highlights. Yeah,
I see. I see.
we
Yes.
are more on palay. Yeah,
Okay. Yes. And ma'am, do you also employ other workers?
of
Do,
course, yes, because it's a wide land. We employ other workers um, during planting season and during the harvest season.
yes. When you decided to go into rice farming, was there a point when you consulted with certain organizations or government
Sorry,
agencies?
no, it was
Yeah.
not clear.
Yeah. Did you,
Uh,
when you decided to go
Please,
into
ma'am,
rice
it was not
farming?
heard well. I was not taking the question.
Okay, I will try to be clearer. When you decided to go into farming, did you consult, let's say, the agricultural office in your hometown? Did you get support from other
No,
organizations?
no, no, no,
So,
no,
yeah.
because my family was already involved into farming this means of
Oh.
livelihood. No, we did not ask because from my grandparents to my
Mm.
parents, then
Okay.
now it's now in our age. It's now we.
Okay. So you basically continued the tradition, but you also invested. What you did as an innovation is that you invested in equipment like tractors. Yes. Okay. Yes.
I'm
Okay.
sorry, I was not able to take the question. It was not so
No, no,
clear.
I was just making a comment that basically po, you were continuing a tradition because your family has been involved also in farming, and your innovation is in introducing equipment, modern equipment into your farming practices. Okay. Yes.
Yes. Yes po.
Yeah.
We have now the modern way of farming because we have already the uh, uh
Machinery and equipment.
yes po.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, po. Ma'am, so do you think that
Yeah, yeah, we have already this equipment.
okay. So, do you think that it's investing in agriculture is a good way to invest compared to say investing in transportation or buildings? I think there's a
Uh, uh, yes po. Rice agriculture is also is a good project or a good business to be indulged with or to put into investment, to put into our investment because the returning of investment is more. It's so far more than a half. the return of investment to it is more than a half of what you have invested.
Okay. So thanks. That's good to know po that actually investing in agriculture is also profitable, no? Because many people think of agriculture simply as very hard work, and that there are many costs but very little profit. Can you tell us about your plans for the future? Your plans for the future, ma'am.
Uh, for the future, we want to yeah, for us about agriculture.
Mm-hmm.
First, we want to more. So we want to develop more. We want to put more. We want to put more investment into it. Like for example, to buy more equipments that would
I
use
see.
to it. The modern way, for example, of harvesting. There's also modern way of these machines. Yeah,
Okay.
that is our future plan for that.
Okay. Thank you very
And to
much,
put
Paul. And
more, what
all right.
to be able to plant more. For example, we just plant now for twice a year. We want to plant more. For example, 3 times a year. For example, if only if there would be a sufficient supply of water from the irrigation.
Okay, okay, yes. All right. So perhaps we can go back to some other issues later. Thank you very much, Miss Gina, for sharing your experience. And I hope that also the children will have an interest in agriculture as well. I'm sorry to our online participants that there was some problem with the connection, but I hope that you got the drift of the conversation. Now, I'd like to bring into our conversation Mr. Rude Concepcion II, whom I introduced earlier as a young agripreneur. Hello, Rude. Kumusta?
Hello, ma'am. Okay naman po.
Okay. So, Rude, meron ka bang gustong idagdag dun sa pagpapakilala sa'yo? Can you tell us a few things about yourself and your family?
Oh, um, ako, ma'am, ako my name is Rude Concepcion and I'm a member of the 4-H Club
Mhm.
uh, of the Philippines as one of the youth organization involving lahat ng members will be involved in agriculture, not in agriculture but in other like fisheries and lahat ng functions of the agriculture. So I'm a member since 2013 and I'm exposed in farming when I was 14 years old. So when I was grade 4, tsaka uh, from elementary to high school, I was exposed in agriculture. So nagtatanim kami doon dito sa amin kasi dito sa Isabela, we are preferably rice areas. So we are practicing more on rice production area. But in some other places like kung in may mga areas yung areas namin na hindi naman natatamnan ng rice, we planted vegetables and we cater animals like pigs, chickens. So
Okay.
being a youthpreneur and a member of the 4-H Club youth organization is very helpful to me na naging part ako ng organization na yun kasi it built me up as a young entrepreneur and builds me up as a young farmer.
Okay. Rude,
Yun
can you
po.
explain to them? Yeah? Rude, can you explain to them what
Yes,
4-H
ma'am.
is? Ano yung apat na H?
4-H Club means the heart, the head, the heart, the hands, and the health. So that is the four fundamentals of the 4-H Club. Meron logo ang 4-H Club. 4-H Club is originated from America, international organization, adopted by the Philippines and with the help of the Agricultural Training Institute. Sila po yung aming sila po yung tumutulong sa amin to improve ourselves, lahat ng members ng 4-H Club na lahat ng membro nakabilang from national to provincial to municipal. So encouraging all the youths to join the 4-H club. Marami pong benefits not just to help have knowledge in farming, but it gives also potential startup to make farming easier para sa ating para sa mga kabataan, wherein ngayon medyo hindi na sila hindi na nila parang hindi naman sa they forget, pero yung yung hindi na nila masyadong pinapansin ang agriculture. Sa today's generation, today's pandemic, napakahalaga ang agriculture, napakahalaga ang pagtatanim, pag-aalaga ng hayop, kasi yun is the one that is called survival para sa atin. So yun, ma'am. Yeah.
Yes. Siguro, Rod, pwede mo ring ikwento, because you also had that experience of training in Japan for 18 months.
Yes po.
Yes. Can you tell us how that also contributed to your gaining more knowledge and also some additional experience in the field of agriculture?
Yes, ma'am. So, from noon, hindi ko pa masyadong gamay kung ano talaga yung agriculture para sa atin. So, when I start umattend sa mga training ng ATI, Agricultural Training Institute, and doon po ako nagkaroon ng interest na there are more possibilities na pwedeng ma-involve. Hindi lang sa iisang commodities, marami pang ibang commodities na pwede. So, patuloy po akong nag-train, sumali sa mga pa-training ng ATI, and then once nagkaroon sila ng selection for the international internship or the Young Filipino Farmers Training Program, sumali po ako doon, take ng examinations, maraming validations, so ang daming mga selections po na nangyari. So when I was selected, I was so very happy na naging part ako ng we are three here in Isabel in Region 2. But I was one of being selected. Then yun po, nagpatuloy yung training namin. Nagkaroon kami ng training dito sa Pilipinas. We have conducted several trainings here in the Philippines bago kami pinalipad pumunta sa Japan, kasi alam naman po natin na advanced country ang Japan. So we have trains in cattle, rice, machineries, and piggeries. So na-train kami dito bago kami na-train din, kasi nalaman namin na alam naman natin na ang Japan is very 50 years ang above. Yung 50 years ang pagitan ng technology dito sa Pilipinas. So yun po, and we select kami po 18 kami from the whole Philippines. We are selected 18 participants from Region 1 to the BARM. So yun po, nag-train kami doon I was chosen also as their leaders. Ang hirap maging hindi naman ako kagalingan nun sa Japanese, kasi nag-aral din po kami ng 75 days po yung pre-departure orientation namin, na kailangan namin mag-aral ng Japanese culture. So napaka-broad dapat yung pag-iisip namin bago kami pumunta doon, kasi once na we had misinterpreted magkakaroon, kasi meron po kami host parent doon. Yung mga host parent, kanya-kanya kaming host parent. Our host parents are native Japanese, so they can't understand a lot of English. So konti-konti lang po yung naiintindihan nila, kaya naging isang challenge sa amin yun, na to communicate. We have to para matuto po kami, kailangan namin talagang magsikap para malaman namin yung technology, yung tinatago nilang diskarte sa pa-farming po sa Japan. Lahat ng mga Japanese na mga naging host parent namin, sobrang bait naman po, at naalagaan kami ng gusto na ibigay naman nila yung needs namin sa training din. Yun po, nagpatuloy hanggang sa natapos po. Yes, natapos din. We're going back here in the Philippines para yung natutunan namin is to share naman po sa mga constituents natin o sa mga nasasakupan namin, para naman po kahit konti-konti ma-involve namin yung farming nila into medyo modern way.
Okay,
po.
yes. So overall, it was a very good experience, the training
Yes
program
po,
that you
yes
got in
po,
Japan. Ruth, pwede mong
yes
ikwento
po.
sa amin, can you tell us about your farming activities? What do you plant? Ano ba yung siguro mga innovations din na introduce mo sa farming?
Mm,
Yeah.
yes ma'am. Now kasi mga farming season din po namin ng rice ngayon. So we are cultivating rice fields, and then medyo yung climate ngayon dito sa Isabela is medyo mainit. So we are selecting good quality seeds na for vegetables naman po para sa although rainy season dapat, pero may mga areas po dito na sobrang init pa rin. So yun yung isang challenge sa amin na mga farmer kung ano yung dapat namin. Pero now ma'am, magtatanim pa kami mga essential food like talong, kamatis, sili. May mga alaga po din po kaming manok, pigs, and also I'm cultivating ma'am mushroom culture. Yes.
Okay. Yun yata ang bago mo,
Trinay
no?
po.
Yung mushroom.
Yes
Ruth, yan
po.
yata ang bago mong
Mushroom.
production na yung sa mushroom. Yeah. Can
Yes
you
po
tell us
ma'am.
about
Yes
that?
ma'am. We are cultivating oyster mushroom is one of the varieties po ng oyster ng mushroom na medyo kailangan din ng technical kailangan ng matinding technical idea para kung paano ito gawin, pero siguro kung para sa aming mga youth kailangan namin talagang kailangan maintindihan yung process para makapag-produce. So we are producing ma'am. We are selling also. Kasi dito sa amin, dito sa Isabela, abundant po ang rice straw. Wherein the rice straw is one of the best substrates of oyster mushroom. So yun po yung ginagamit namin yung mga farmer sa amin dito. Tapos nilang mag-harvest, yung imbis na tinatapon nila yung rice straw. Sinasabi po namin sa kanila na huwag nilang itapon kasi there is a new possible business or possible opportunities with that waste na pwede namang gamitin to have a potential kahit konting source of income lang po. So from now, I'm cultivating oyster mushroom, and also I'm cultivating the shiitake, the Japanese shiitake po.
Okay.
So medyo mahirap kasi technical po siya kasi kailangan malamig siya. Pero nakapagpatubo naman po.
Okay. Yes.
Hopefully nagkaroon siya ng tubo.
Okay. So parang
So yun po yung
dina-diversify.
business namin. Yes po, yes po.
So yeah, you are also diversifying the crops that you are cultivating
Yes
in
po,
between
yes po.
rice cultivation. And then
Yes po.
I think we have some comment here from Director Aton from ATI that he also mentioned
Hello,
that part
sir.
also of the training that you got in Japan is that you were given some startup capital, no? To continue your farming. So tama po ba, Ruth? No? Was that also
Yes po, meron. Nagkaroon. Yes po, yes po. Very napaka-helpful din po ng startup capital na yun na naibigay sa amin ng ATI with Sir Aton na napag-started namin into ginamit ko po yun into the secondary processing kasi may mga processes, may rice na po kami. So ang ginawa ko po like dun sa mushroom, ginawa ko siyang bumili ako ng mga gamit na per crispy chicharon, ganun po. And ginawa ko siya into para hindi ka masiraan kasi volatile po ang mushroom. So kailangan within a day kailangan na siyang mai-dispose. Pag hindi siya na-dispose, nasisira po siya. So yun ginamit namin into selling yung sa process po.
Okay.
Yun po yung naging saka konting mga materials po na naibili namin.
Okay. So that's very interesting because you also moved into parang food processing na rin, no? Ruth,
Yes,
I'm very curious, and maybe also our audience is very curious because for the most part, young people really try to leave agriculture. But in your case, what did you see in agriculture that made you stay in agriculture all this time? Ano yung maganda sa'yo? Ano yung maganda sa agrikultura para sa'yo?
Ang maganda sa agrikultura is number one po dyan is if you expose yourself in agriculture, parang sinabi mo na you are very healthy living person kasi you are producing your own food Number one po yun dapat. Kasi sa Japan po kasi yung trademarks ng mga Japanese food is they produce yung kinakain po nila is nahahanap lang nila sa bakuran nila. So they produce vegetables, different kinds of vegetables in their backyard. Then yun po yung inuulan namin. Hindi sila bumibili ng binibili lang nila is mga condiments. So yun po yung naging push sa akin na agriculture, hindi lang siya isang production process, but it is a business din. Kasi sa akin, yung mushroom po kasi, number one, yung mushroom production, you have, konti lang naman po yung kailangan yung residues from the sodas, rice bran, lahat po yan is residues. So, binibili po namin yun in the low cost way. Then, konting sakripisyo, konting pagod, konting technology na kailangang ilagay, pwede mo siyang ibenta into very expensive way. Kasi yung isang fruiting bags po ng mushroom binibenta namin ng 100 pesos. So binibili po nila yun, ma'am. Number one is dito sa amin kasi medyo talagang rice straw. We are also cultivating the bulbariella o yung the native type of mushroom po na gustong-gusto din ng mga farmer dito kasi yun yung parang traditional na mushroom na kinakain nila. Then yun po sa hindi naman nawawala yung rice dito sa amin kasi yun po yung pinaka product po dito sa amin. So sa akin bilang isang youth, gusto kong pang i-emphasize na hindi lang naman sa pagod, kahit talagang mayroon pong mararamdaman mo yung pagod, yung hirap na mararanasan mo sa agrikultura. Pero at the end, sabi nga po nila, pag may itananim, may anihin. So at the end of the day, sacrifices, meron pong fruit na ma-harvest na pwede mong ibenta into gold. So yun po yung isang opportunities na hindi lang po siya sa production, hindi lang po siya sa to create your own food, but you have if you think very deeply, pwede po siya into business. Pinaka number one po sa atin yan, business type opportunities na pwede nating ma-share o kaya pwede nating maipan sa sarili natin, yung pwede nating maisali po yung sarili natin to do some marketing strategies. Kasi matututunan po tayo sa marketing strategies. When it comes to business, kailangan marketing strategies.
Yes po. So actually maraming phases. Siguro Ruth, very quick questions. Sa palagay mo, posible bang magkaroon ng magandang buhay sa agrikultura?
Yes, ma'am. I think today, sa ngayong panahon ng pandemic ngayon, from noon pa naman, ma'am, kaso kung being a young farmer or sabi ko sa mga farmer na dati na yung mga malalawak na yung farm niya, why do you have to invest in agriculture? Kasi number one dyan is to have help with the agencies like the Agricultural Training Institute. Nagbibigay po sila ng free trainings, and also they have the learning site initiatives, and yung number one po yun, yung isa sa pinakapatok ngayon sa Pilipinas, is the farm tourism. Isa po sa pinakamatinding business ngayon na pero kailangan po silang dumaan into learning site, into farm school. Farm school po is very helpful ngayon kasi COVID, ang hirap. Mga agriculture students nga, mahirap silang maka-caught up in the school. They have to go in farm school with the help of the ETI, TESDA. So, they are the linking partners po naman namin din na nag-help sa amin to build up. Hindi lang siya, ang agriculture, hindi lang siya sa field. You have to pag na-gain na po yung knowledge, kahit pwede na rin tayo mag-teach. Like last year po na ATI, binigyan po kami ni Sir Aton ng training methodologies ng TESDA po, yung pwede kang maging assessor, pwede kang maging trainer in your farm. So napakalaking opportunity po yun sa ating mga kapwa farmer, young farmer na maging TM holder kasi madaming opportunity na ibibigay sa inyo kung isa kang TM holder kasi you are an assessor also in NC2s, and also meron kaming idea about how to build out your farm, kung paano mo siya iayos. So napaka-helpful po yung mga ganung mga programs na kailangan ding ma-avail ng ating mga youth din dito sa Pilipinas and other mga farmers po natin na mga wala pang idea about farming.
Okay, maraming salamat, Ruth. Thank you very much. No? So actually, our conversation with Ruth already opened up other areas and other opportunities in agriculture. He was mentioning that it's not only in the area of production that there can be opportunities in agriculture, but because of developments, there can also be opportunities that can be had in going into training and providing training to other farmers and those that are interested in agriculture as well. So from lived experiences, we now turn for additional insights from our panelists. So I'm very happy to introduce them, and I'll start by introducing Dr. Lucy Jordan, who I think is already a very familiar face to those who have been following up our webinar series. So Lucy is co-principal investigator of the Child Health and Migrant Parents in Southeast Asia project. She's associate professor and associate dean for undergraduate in social work at the University of Hong Kong. Her research focuses on migration, families and well-being, field-based research, capacity building of nonprofit organizations, and policy development. We are also honored to have with us officials of two offices that are attached to or under the Department of Agriculture. We welcome Mr. Alfredo Aton, Director of the Agricultural Training Institute, which is the extension and training arm of the Department of Agriculture. So we have heard already a little bit, actually quite a lot, about the activities and programs of ATI from the experiences of Ruth. And Mr. Aton, Director Aton, will provide us additional insights in our conversation later on. Also with us is Ms. Emmeline J. Ginto, concurrently Chief Communication and Public Affairs Division and OIC Chief Administration Division at the Agricultural Credit Policy Council. So mahalaga po yung council na ito, this particular office, because we will be hearing a lot about the loan schemes that are available to Filipinos in general and also to OFWs in particular. Prior to ACPC, she had stints at the National Economic Development Authority and also at the Agricultural Training Institute. So this is like a reunion of ATI people. She has been in government service for more than 25 years. Ms. Ginto has a master's in public administration from the University of the Philippines and a BA in development communication from the University of the Philippines, Los Baños. Our fourth resource speaker wears many hats, but most of which are related to agriculture. So I'm happy to introduce Mr. Jim Leandro Cano, who is a teaching associate at the University of the Philippines, Los Baños, where he completed his BS in agriculture and where he is now pursuing a Master of Science in Development Management and Governance. Jim is the Philippine representative to the Young Professionals for Agricultural Development, or YPARD, and a founding member of the Youth Alliance for Zero Hunger. Jim's engagement in agriculture-related policy and advocacy are both in the national and international arenas. Okay, so let me start the conversation with Lucy, and I'd like to ask Lucy if from the CHAMSI data there are also some similarities with the findings that I have cited from the other studies that have been done on the relationship between migration and agriculture or investments in agriculture by OFW families.
Thank you, Marla. Yeah, and thanks everyone else. It's been such an interesting webinar already, and actually also looking at the CHAMSI data to prepare some comments for today, I found very interesting as well, because it isn't something that we've focused on per se in the research. But what I found once I started scratching the surface a little bit is that there are different places in our data where we have information about agriculture and migration. I don't want to take too much time on this first slide, and for everybody that's in the webinar, of course, the slides can be made available later if you want to kind of try to find out a bit more depth about the study. But what I want to highlight is the piece where I have the the red oval around it, which is looking at because this is the group that I looked at quite a bit in looking at the findings, which are households that had fathers who were migrants. So our study was looking at child health and migration. So we, all of our households either had a father or a mother who was an OFW at the time when we first approached them in 2008, or perhaps sometimes both of the parents were away. And in our Philippines sample in particular, from communities in Bulacan and Laguna, we ended up having a sizable share of return father households, we called them. So this is by the time we went back in 2016, we had households where the fathers had come home from their time away as OFWs to reestablish life. So next slide, please. So just to highlight a few things that I found looking at our data. One of them is that if I look between the group at households that we had over that period of time from 2008 to 2016 that no one was a migrant, neither the father nor the mother, we found that those households were the most likely in the early career of the fathers to be practicing skilled agriculture. So this includes different types of agricultural activities in the land and also fisheries. And so in some indication of agricultural activities beyond subsistence farming. We also found, interestingly, that amongst the return migrant households, there was the second highest share of households that were likely to have had early in the career, the fathers were working somewhat in skilled agriculture. And our households that were migrant during the whole time that we talked were the least likely to have had an early history of skilled agriculture. So I found that was interesting because I think it gives some suggestion similar to what Gina was talking about, right? About maybe there's some historical reason, family traditions, perhaps more rural areas, but there's some experience of skilled agriculture before the migration event actually happens, which is interesting and resonant a bit with Gina's story. One of the other things that I found is that if we look at our sample over time, we find that there is an increase overall amongst the whole sample in land ownership for residents and also for small business. So again, recall, as I said, our study didn't focus on agriculture per se. So we're using kind of the data to try to understand, some indication perhaps of agricultural activity. And this is actually, though, if you dig in a bit deeper, driven primarily by the differences between households that were always migrant versus those that were never migrant. And in the direction that you might expect, which is that there's an increase in assets actually among the always migrant households, rather than the households that don't have migration. And then the final thing again, which is perhaps not completely surprising as well, is that in our group, households that had the father away all the time were households that were more likely to not only be accumulating savings, but also to be accumulating livestock, which actually is kind of interesting because, the livestock, it means that is another type of agricultural activity. So one more slide and a few other more comments before we go on to the other resource speakers, please. So finally, I wanted to just close with a story from one of our households, a story of migration and return, which I think also raises some points which could be interesting for the other resource speakers to reflect on if it's relevant. So this was a household who, when we went back in 2017, was 39-year-old father who was a return migration. When we first met this family, there was a son who was under 5 years old. And the father described when we spoke with him in 2017 that he had originally left to migrate because of limited work opportunities at home. And during the migration history had lived in the Middle East, and then also a period back at home and a period in Singapore, primarily working in semi-skilled mechanical type work. And but prior to migration, this was a family that was practicing subsistence farming. And actually, by the time we went back to visit, they had a small farm management operation where they were hiring a few workers to do the harvest. And they also had small business, described a story of small business ownership to help them achieve these goals of beginning to have some kind of sustainability in agriculture, which they bought a tricycle and were renting that out, in a period before that became very popular. And they also described how by the time we revisited them, that they were able to earn enough money through the agriculture to maintain a somewhat similar level of livelihood that they had had at the tail end of their migration period. But one of the things that was clear from this story, which I think is interesting with the resource people, is that this is a family who perhaps if they had had opportunities to help them kind of focus on the capital that they might need to be able to have a more sustainable agricultural operation, that could have actually helped them to maximize their returns a bit, in terms of being like when I hear the story we just heard from the young entrepreneurial agriculture, what if those opportunities had been available, or perhaps even if the person had known about them in this household, it could have had a different impact on their engagement and involvement in agriculture. So those are just some highlights from some of the stories in our data. Marla, thank you for asking and for inviting me to the webinar. I'm happy to answer any follow-up questions or look forward to hearing from the other resource people.
Okay, thank you very much, Lucy. So actually, we see a lot of overlaps, between the lived experiences of our sharers and also what we are finding out from research. So that's very good to know that somehow the realities really reinforce each other. So it's like when we are talking from a research perspective, it's not that it just comes out of our imagination, but they are really based on the experiences of people as well. Actually, we have a few quick questions that I'd also just like to mention. One of the questions is actually for Rude, but maybe he can also address this later. Mary Ann Guevara wants to find out whether your farm is a family farm or whether it is a group enterprise. And there's also somebody commented, I think it's Leo Iborda. He said that he's interested in farming, in mushroom farming. And then there's a question from Rowena. Let me just read out that question here. She was wondering whether the programs that we will talk about will only be for repatriated OFWs or returning OFWs, or will they apply also to the locals who are working here and those that have been laid off? I think our two other speakers will speak to this question, and just to say that there's good news ahead of us. So may I invite Director Aton from the Agricultural Training Institute, whose institute has been mentioned many times. Good afternoon po, sir.
So good afternoon po sa atin lahat. Good afternoon to everyone. First and foremost, I want to mention what is the primary mandate of our agency. Based on the Executive Order number 116 series of 1987, the Agricultural Training Institute shall be responsible for the training of all agricultural extension workers and their clients, who are mostly farmers and other agricultural workers, ensure that training programs address the real needs of our agricultural sector, and also ensure that the research results are then communicated to the farmers through the appropriate training and extension services. So ATI is mandated as the overall manager to oversee the planning and implementation of the agriculture and fisheries training and extension of the country, and also leads in the formulations of the National Agriculture and Fisheries Extension Agenda and Budget. Another is prepare the integrated plan for the publicly funded extension programs and agriculture and fisheries, and also advise the Department of Agriculture in managing the financial and the logistical support of agriculture and fisheries extension. Another is ATI is the one who formulate and issue guidelines in planning, implementing, monitoring, and evaluating of the agriculture and fisheries extension program of the country. And also, we also assist in the coordination with the state universities, colleges, and other local government units extension system by improving their effectiveness and efficiency through capability building and complementary extension activities. So our ATI has a training program is only part of our function because we have 5 thematics in our agency that we are following as being the Bible of our agency, which is refocus on the ATI's thematic areas into 5 key areas focusing on the 4 major extension services stipulated in the Agriculture and Fisheries Modernization Act or ACMA, namely learn is the training. It is to strengthen the capacity and competitiveness through capability building. And another also is modeling technologies or best practices and fisheries and extension innovations. Another is we will be empowering farmers and fishers through advisory services. And another part is the enhancing the agriculture and fisheries extension knowledge product and services. This is now the IEC materials. And also improving on enabling environment and governance for agriculture and fisheries extension system. That is what we call PTI leads, LEEDS. So our training programs, it will cover all family members, not only the husband, the wife, the sons, but we have farm family approach in our activities. No, we have also training programs like production technologies and value chain approach, farmer field school, entrepreneurial trainings. We have also scholarship programs for our young farmers, the youth empowerment through sustainable program or the YES program. We have also provisions for educational for the youth. This is a degree program. Those are encouraging students to enroll in agriculture. We have also establishing the learning sites for agriculture. This is a ladderized approach of our farmers. Now, first, they will establish to be a learning site. Once they have already established the learning sites and it is being validated by our team, if it can be elevated to School of Practical Agriculture. In this area, the learning site owner can then teach to our farmers already agricultural products or agricultural activities. And after they will pass through the School of Practical Agriculture, they will be also elevated as farm tourism school. where we will tie up with the Department of Tourism. Another program is we have we will be accrediting organized institutions to become extension service providers to serve as partners in the provision of extension services to our farmers and fishers folks. Kasi alam ninyo, we have 110 million most in the Philippines and only a handful of our extension workers in the Philippines. Like for example, we have 16 regional centers scattered all over the Philippines. But in our center, we have only a handful or something, 30 regular employees. So we will partners with local government units and SUCs, extension service providers, in order that our the technologies that is being imparted by our farmers will also be replicated down the level. So another program is our extension program for agriculture and fisheries. This is now very timely with this pandemic because we cannot train, we cannot have a face-to-face activities with our farmers. So we have this extension program or e-learning. We have available courses now at 66 free online courses na pwedeng magamit even nasa abroad pa yung mga OFWs natin o nandito na sa Pilipinas. They can open our website www.extension.gov.ph/e-learning. Available at 66 online courses, 34 courses for crops, 13 courses for livestock, 3 courses for marine and fisheries, 8 courses for social technology, 8 courses for sustainable agri, and 23 other courses related to urban agriculture. This is now very of great help na kahit na hindi sila yung ating mga OFWs na hindi magkaroon ng time face-to-face engagement with our extension personnel on the ground, they can open our website and enroll whatever courses they would like to enroll. And after the course that nakumpleto na nila, they will be given a certificate of completion. Another extension program for agriculture and fisheries is the webinar on various agricultural technologies, like, for example, urban agriculture, container gardening, organic concoction, hydroponics, mushroom production, etc. And also, we have also farm business advisory services via Farmers Contact Center. Please put on record, kung gusto niyo kopyahin, merong ang number namin is 0920-946-2474. This is a query based or we have a text blast or blast post. Another also, this is the mandate of our secretary to intensify our urban gardening. So we have established urban agri-fisheries garden, and that we provide some funds for this. After the training, we will give them the provision of starter kits, access to information and knowledge, like for example, School on the Air. This is the program of our urban agriculture now, School on the Air, farm business advisory through farmers contact centers, social media campaign, provision of IC materials and webinars. In our rice competitive enhancement fund, we have also several trainings listed so that our farmers will be more sufficient, will have a more sufficient knowledge about how to produce more rice for the Philippines. We have information caravans, school on the air, farm business advisories, and social media campaigns. Balikan natin yun si Rudy about our young farmers. Kasi every year it is our we have a partnership with Japan. Now we will be sending 20 farmers, 25 young farmers to Japan to have their training, 11 months training in Japan. JAEC, we have partnered with JAEC, the Japan Agriculture Exchange Council. And here in the Philippines, we will walang gastusin yung mga trainees. Only the qualification is that you have school dropouts and single and 27 years old and below. That's our requirement, and we will be expending so much for them, like the training for Nihongo class and some other courses and their traits here in the Philippines, so that when they will be in Japan, they will no longer have a problem of communicating to our farmers, because some of our Japanese farmers there doesn't speak English. So we have to adjust. Our young farmers will adjust their what we call that their traits in Japan. So they will spend 11 months training there, and after the training, they will come back to the Philippines. They will prepare a proposal, and if the proposal will be evaluated and will pass to our criteria, we will give them a startup capital of the most of 60,000 pesos. So that's the program. Our activity in ATI doesn't only focus on OFWs, but everybody in the Philippines. We will not collect any money. Only is their participation is their time. We will shoulder all the cost of our training to our farmers and fishers in the Philippines. Only their participation is just their time and their interest in agriculture. Thank you very much. That's the end of my presentation. Additional, you can also call our ATI Interactive. You can call 1800-10-982-2474 or text 0920-946-2474 or email at info@extension.com.ph, or you can email that to ATI_director@yahoo.com.
Okay.
This
Thank
is
you.
located Elliptical Road, Diliman, Quezon City, our
Yes.
central office.
Yes. So actually, sir, we actually will provide them with what do you call this? The web address, and also the contact details, and also to just to say that all the ATI main office, as well as the ATI regional centers, they all have Facebook accounts. So we also encourage our participants to check out the websites of the main ATI office and the regional centers and their Facebook accounts. Napakayaman po sa impormasyon ang makukuha po ninyo doon. And actually, yes, Director Aton has already answered one of the questions that yes, the trainings, particularly in the e-learning, they're all for free. And they're open to all Filipinos, hindi lang po para sa mga OFWs. Actually, that's the good idea about it, is that it is open to everyone. And what will only be required of each one of us, as he had mentioned, is that we take the time to study and to avail of these programs and services. Napakaganda po ng presentation ni Director Aton because he also provided us with a view that agriculture is not only about farming, it also includes the fishery sector, which is also a very rich sector in the Philippines. So wag po nating kalimutan yan. At marami pa po siyang mga nabanggit na aside from just training, there's also a lot of support to farmers at different stages of the farming cycle. And also, nabanggit niya rin po yung mga scholarship programs, including the ones that, and training programs in Japan, including the one that RUD has availed of. And of course, the support of ATI to young farmers, mainly through the 4-H club as well. So maraming salamat po. At nabanggit din po pala kanina sa presentation ni Director Aton because there's somebody, I think it's Leo Iborda, who's interested in mushroom production. Mushroom production is also one of the courses that's offered in the e-learning. So please check out the e-learning website and you will find a lot more information. Maraming salamat po, sir, and Rude. So now we go to Miss Emeline Ginto because money is very important also in agriculture. Ms. Emeline Ginto will give us an overview of what the ACPC is all about and what are the programs and services that this particular office offers. So you have the floor, ma'am.
Okay, good afternoon. Good afternoon, everyone. It's our privilege. It's my privilege to be here in this activity on behalf of the Agricultural Credit Policy Council, headed by our Executive Director, Jocelyn Alma Badiola. We would like to share with you our current agri-fishery projects. But before that, I would just like to give credence to the previous presenters, particularly the ones who gave the testimonials, Ms. Gina Delgado, returning OFW, and Mr. Rude Concepcion, a young agripreneur who is not, unlike his name, is not rude, but very, very polite. Also, of course, the ones presented by Ms. Lucy, particularly the story of the 39-year-old returning migrant worker. So we appreciate those kinds of stories, as well as the studies on presented by Ms. Marla, particularly on the needs on the capital for business of our migrant workers. So, which we hope we will be able to address these needs, as well as the giving of business advice to those who want to engage to agri and fishery. So first, let me go straight to the outline of my presentation. Next slide. I will give you a brief background about the ACPC's mandate, and then I will immediately proceed to the discussion of our current programs, particularly the expanded Sure Aid and Recovery Project, Capital Access for Young Agripreneurs, and the Agri-Negosyo. So next slide. As I've said, the ACPC is an attached agency of the Department of Agriculture. It is headed, of course, by our tireless Secretary, William Dar. Essentially, ACPC's mandate is to develop and advocate easy, affordable, and timely credit programs for farmers and fishers, including those agri-fishery-based micro and small enterprises. But before I go to the presentation of our programs, allow me to explain that per law, our agency cannot do direct lending. That is why we have to tap government financial institutions like the Land Bank, the DBP, cooperative banks, non-government financial institutions, which we call partner lending conduits, to administer and implement credit programs by extending loans directly to the eligible borrowers. So per law, we cannot directly lend to the small farmers and fishers. I just want to make that clear at the onset. So our partnership with these grassroots-based organizations in the implementation of our agri-fishery programs continues to significantly contribute to financial inclusion as it enables the unserved and underserved small farmers and fishers, particularly in the countryside, to have easier access to financing. So now let me go straight to the first program being implemented by the ACPC. It's called the Expanded Sure Aid and Recovery Project, or Sure COVID-19. So this is a loan facility for small farmers and fishers and agri-fishery-based micro and small enterprises who are directly affected by the enhanced community quarantine due to COVID-19. So our programs were shifted to focus particularly on these sectors, those who were affected by the community quarantine due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Next slide. The Sure COVID-19 program offers working capital loans to agri-fishery-based micro and small enterprises to continue operations and ensure the availability of food supply amid the enhanced community quarantine. It also offers emergency assistance to small farmers and fishers whose incomes were affected by the ECQ. So let me first explain the loan features for the small farmers and fishers. So they can avail 25,000 loan amount per household at zero interest with no collateral, and this is payable for 10 years. The eligible loan purpose is to finance their emergency and production requirements since their incomes were affected by the ECQ due to the COVID-19 pandemic. On the other hand, next slide. On the other hand, our program, or the Sure COVID-19 program for micro and small enterprise facility, gives loans to provide working capital requirements of agri-fishery-based MSEs to ensure the availability of food supply and to help them recover their losses incurred from the effects of the ECQ due to the pandemic. Borrowers may avail of loans up to 10 million at zero interest and payable up to 5 years. Next slide, please. There. For the small farmer and fisher borrower facility, we partnered with the local government units through their city or municipal agricultural office to identify the small farmer and fisher who are in the registry system for basic sectors in agriculture, or RSBSA. So let me explain that the RSBSA is basically a database of farmers and fishers and farm laborers that is used by the DA and its attached agencies and bureaus in identifying beneficiaries of its various programs. The LGU's office facilitates the inclusion of farmers and fishers in the RSBSA. So the MAU, the Municipal Agricultural Office of the LGUs, as well as the DA regional field offices, including ACPC focal persons in the different provinces, can help facilitate the enrollment of farmers and fishers who are not yet registered under the RSBSA. Once the list of eligible borrowers is validated by the DARFO and the ACPC, it will then be transmitted to our partner lending conduits. And then these partner lending conduits will conduct the evaluation, background investigation, and including credit investigation, and eventually they will be the one who will approve or disapprove the loan application. They will facilitate the release of loan proceeds and collect loan repayments. Next slide. There. Listed on this slide are the simple requirements for the loan applicants, which include government-issued ID with picture, one photo, and then loan application and promissory note. Again, the farmers and fishers borrowers must be in the RSBSA. However, as I've said earlier, for those who are not yet in the RSBSA, they can enroll through their MAUs or the local government units or the DARFOs or the ACPC focal persons. Next slide. For the MSE borrowers, on the other hand, you may use our online application that can be found on our website. Our website is acpc.gov.ph. You just have to fill out the form and upload the requirements. The ACPC will then review the submissions and endorse the application to a partner lending conduit. Finally, the partner lending conduit will process the application, and if approved, the loan shall be disbursed to the MSE borrower. Next slide. Here are the application requirements for MSEs. Endorsement letter from DARFO, provincial or municipal local government units and other partner government agencies, letter of intent or application, board resolution signifying the intention of the MSE to be a borrower designating its authorized signatories, business plan, copy of certificate of registration documents from either CDA or SEC, and financial statements for the past 3 years preceding the date of the application. Next. Let me now proceed to the second current programs we are implementing. It's called the Capital Access for Young Agripreneurs. The Capital Access for Young Agripreneurs, or CAYA, is a loan facility for young agripreneurs who are 18 years old up to 30 years old and graduates of formal or non-formal schooling. The program targets the younger generation of Filipinos to be key players in ensuring affordability and availability of food supply. Next. There. The eligibility loan purpose for CAYA is to finance the capital requirements of startup or existing farm and fishery business. Under the program, our young agripreneurs may borrow uncollateralized loans of up to 500,000 at zero interest payable up to 5 years. An online application platform for CAYA is already in the works and shall be made available. You can visit our website as well as our Facebook page for further announcements on this. In the meantime, interested young agripreneurs may email us at surecovidofw@gmail.com or pdd@acpc.gov.ph. Later, these email addresses will be flashed. And then finally, this is the third program the ACPC is currently implementing. It's called the Agri-Negosyo or ANYO. ANYO offers zero interest loans to finance capital requirements for individuals, groups, including OFWs, and micro and small enterprises that are engaged in agriculture and fishery projects. Next. There. The eligible loan purpose for the program is to finance the working capital requirements for production, processing, distribution, and other activities in the supply chain, including acquisition of machineries, equipment, and construction of facilities. Borrowers may avail themselves of up to 15 million at zero interest payable up to 5 years. For those interested OFWs who may want to borrow through the ANYO, you may also use our online application found in our website. Next slide. Next slide. There. So this slide shows the process flow of the online application for interested OFWs. At the onset, let me make it clear that we are prioritizing OFWs who have returned back, the repatriated OFWs. So they can just go to our website and visit the ACPC website and click the online application, and from there on, they will be guided accordingly. Please take note of the following contact details for more information about our programs. Okay, and that brings to the end of the presentation. On behalf of the ACPC, our Executive Director, Jocelyn Alma Bajola, and my co-workers, particularly the Communications and Public Affairs Division and the Admin Division, thank you so much for your interest and attention.
Thank you very much, Ms. Ginto. I think yung siguro something that is really very striking about your loan schemes is that basically all of them are zero interest rate po, no? Zero interest rate, and also the time, the number of years for repayment is pretty long.
5 years, yes.
5 years, yes. Ma'am, may quick question lang po ako. Kasi like, for example, in the case of Anyo, you mentioned there that but that's of course like a big investment, no? Because they can take out a loan for as high as 15 million, if I heard it correctly. So actually, the loan schemes po, depending on the program, but in particular, for example, in the case of Anyo, the loans can be used to buy equipment.
Yes.
Yes.
Acquisition of machineries and equipment.
Okay, so this would apply to, would this apply to, say, for example, you have a mango farm and you want to go into production of mango juice, you want to go into the production of dried green mangoes, dried yellow mangoes and all that. Pwede po yun na from mango production, you also go into food processing.
Yes,
that
po.
would. Okay, that's good to know. Apo.
Okay,
So
Anyo
it's not
provide.
only- yeah.
Yes. Anyo can provide the working capital for production, processing, distribution, and other activities in the supply chain.
Okay, maraming salamat po. I think that's very good to know. And I hope that we can also include the PowerPoint presentation that you did so that all the contact details and also the details about the requirements for the loans and what they have to submit, they can always go back and review. Okay lang po ma'am na i-post namin yung PowerPoint presentation? Okay, yes. So thank you very much. No? I would like to ask for an extension of our time because we actually have one more resource person and maybe we can also have some additional time later to address some of the questions, although I think most of the questions and comments have already been addressed. So our final speaker, and definitely not the least, is Mr. Jim Leandro Cano. Jim?
Hi, ma'am.
Hello, kumusta?
Good afternoon po. Okay lang
Yes.
po.
Yes. So actually, Jim, you have a lot of experience talking with different sectors, different stakeholders rather in the agriculture sector. You talk with decision makers, you talk with farmers, you talk also with researchers, and also with other related stakeholders in this sector. Ano yung mga nakikita mong mga parang significant developments, no, in recent years that maybe make you feel a bit more optimistic about agriculture these days?
That's a very broad question, ma'am. No? But I'll do my best to answer it.
Yeah.
Yeah, yes. But definitely, just to give a background to the audience about like the kind of work that I do. I have different roles in the academe. I'm a teaching associate in UPLB. I do policy advocacy at the global level and also on the national level with YPARD Philippines. And I also lead this new group called Youth Alliance for Zero Hunger. So it's basically an international alliance of different youth in agriculture organizations where we're trying to bring in different international organizations such as YPARD Global, World Farmers Organization, 4-H International, and then trying to bring the youth voice to the United Nations Food Agency's policy discussions. And I also have some roles in business. No? So may mga agribusiness akong dinadala. So just so that you understand where I'm coming from and the perspective. But I think in terms of how agriculture, quote unquote, has developed, or at least in the past 5 years that I've been working as a researcher and in policy advocacy, I think it's very promising to see, ma'am, that there is a resurgence of interest in agriculture. For one, I mean, coming from the city, I grew up in Cebu City, and most of my friends didn't really understand why I ventured into agriculture. and I didn't go to Manila for college instead of, with them. And so it was kind of, at that time back in 2010, it was somehow the question was, why agriculture, no? And that was the question. But now, especially ngayon during the COVID-19, mas nakikita natin na people are now seeing the value of agriculture, because we've seen that food is the essential or quintessential portion of the economy, no? And like what I always say in the policy discussions, that food security always is national security. Food security is national security, because kung wala yung pagkain na yan, if we look at history, there's a very huge tendency for social upheavals to happen, no? So, malaking bagay ang pagkain. And then this, in relation to our discussion on OFWs and the opportunities for young people, we can see that because of this surge of interest back into agriculture, I'd like to even broaden the discussion, not just agriculture per se, but we talk about food systems now. No, I like how Ma'am Emmy from ACPC said the capital that they can offer with Anyo goes through the supply chain, can be used in the different parts of the supply chain, because that's what I'm trying to portray here, is that when we talk to young people, pag nagka-career talk ako, what I always tell young people is, normally, ang pagtingin kasi natin sa agrikultura ay farming lang, no? Which is not bad, which is good. It's very profitable. But the perspective or the perception that when we say agriculture, nakabilad sa araw, nakakalabaw lang, naka sa putek, no? Yung nakayuko the whole day, it's backbreaking work. But it's very different, because we need to make sure that the young people, and even our OFW kababayans, and even the wider Filipino community, need to see that agriculture is much more than that, much more than farming. It's the food system, and what we say, yung abbreviation na ginagamit natin to promote that is perfect, no? Merong perfect opportunities in agriculture. When we say perfect, ibig sabihin, pag papasok ka sa agrikultura, papasok ka sa food systems, there is an entry point in the policy level, which is your letter P. There is an entry point at the education, the academe, research for letter R, finance and farming, and fisheries, E for extension, C for communications, and T for technologies and trade. So if you look at the perfect opportunities framework, which my friend from South Africa, Dr. Hilaming Gwenya, framed, that is a very catchy approach to promote agriculture, because it gives you that broad range of what food systems is all about. Na hindi lang pala siya farming. It's everything in between. It's the policy environment in which agriculture and the food system exists in, and it's also where young people can actually partake in, or even our kababayans na mga OFWs na pauwi at naghahanap, nag-iisip paano pumasok sa agrikultura, paano pumasok sa food system, they can actually enter into the different sections, no? Food processing, food logistics. Itong mga to, they're showing, especially logistics, that's showing to be a challenge now, because COVID-19 has tested our food system's resiliency. No, nakikita natin na yung pagkakat during the lockdown, when there was the abrupt lockdown, there was a standstill in the distribution and logistics of our food, and everybody was shocked. They didn't know right away what to do. Medyo after a month or two, tsaka pa tayo medyo nakakagets ng rhythm on how do we distribute our food. Because our food system and our supply chains have been very much reliant on just-in-time deliveries, no? Which COVID-19 has tested, and we've all failed that test. Just-in-time deliveries cannot make it in time given the situation. So, kailangan natin pag-isipan ano ang mga innovative ways to overcome these kinds of challenges, no? So that's one thing. No, logistics is an opportunity for our kababayans na who want to go into agriculture, don't have the technical know-how. We've seen that Sir Aton shared with the here in the webinar that that there are a lot of opportunities to learn from ATI and free yung resources, walang bayad,
Yes,
napakaganda niyan,
definitely.
and that's something that we should take advantage of, no? There is also a surge of webinars during the COVID-19 na yung mga kasamahan ko sa UPLB, yung mga faculty, nagsasabi na minsan, ang daming webinar, di ko na alam kung saan ako pupunta. No? So, we have to be strategic also. What do you want to learn about? Where can I go? You know, what do I want to learn about? Do I want to learn about natural farming? Do I want to learn about agribusiness? For agribusiness, you can go to Go Negosyo. They have usual webinars going on and mentoring online. That's for free. For technical expertise, the DA has webinars. The DOST Picard has webinars on that. For discussions on how to set up a business with equipment, the DOST Setup program also has discussions on that, and the DOST TAPI, TAPI, also has webinars on that. So yung mga ganito, we just need to be strategic. Sorry, ma'am?
No. Go ahead, please. Go ahead.
Yeah. So very strategic. We just need to be very strategic in how we want to learn. Importante yung alam natin ano yung gusto natin. Where do we want to venture into, and what do we want to learn, and ano yung resources na meron tayo. For example, do you have a backyard? Do you have a land in the province na pwedeng pag-isipan paano siya gawing productive? Or do we have resources such as maybe contacts? No, you have networks where you can actually connect people and then be the logistical arm to bridge food. And my friend Cherry Atiliano from Agrea has done a good work with the Move Food initiative that she started, no? And they're basically moving food from the farmers to the markets during the time of lockdown, especially with the help of Secretary William Dar and fellow Go Negosyo agri-mentors. So, yung mga ganong bagay, no? Now, how do we become innovative? How do we make use of social media platforms also to learn, to communicate, to market, and to campaign for these kinds of opportunities? And for our kababayans that may not have the technical capacity and find that all these other resources are still lacking, they still need hand-holding, you know, I'd like to insert here in this segment also that Dream Agritech Consultancy Services offers several core services to help our kababayans jumpstart that interest in agriculture. No? So Dream Agritech offers several core services such as farm planning. We help you develop farms for your land. Farm implementation. So kung gusto nyo pong i-implement yung plan na binuo natin with you, we can do that. We can help you out. And then there's the monitoring and retainer service na if kailangan nyo na merong naka-deploy dun sa farm nyo to oversee the development, the implementation, that we can also work with you on that. And of course, you know, the Dream Agri-Media is there to do webinars and training and hosting services, and also AgriWorks. Now we're working on how we can connect labor to the labor that you need in your farm. So yung mga ganito. So Dream Agritech is just one player among many others, no? So you can tap into and look into the different side of things. So I think in a broader sense, ma'am, there's a lot of opportunities to say in agriculture, no? Understatement po siyang pag sinabing ganun, because there is really a lot, and you just have to be really creative in how you want to see and find a way, an entry point sa agrikultura. Yung tanong niyo po, ma'am, you sent me a guide question regarding something related to me encountering OFW families who have ventured into farming. I haven't had really direct contact with OFW families, but I have had indirect contacts, no, na nagsabi sila na yung mga OFW friends nila naghahanap ng farming. And there's one specific farm that I'm also helping out in Batangas with Dr. Pabs Villegas, who is a former executive of Land Bank, and he has developed micro farm lots, no? So yung micro farm lots na he's divided his farm into 1,000 square meter lots where OFWs can invest in, and then he will provide also the technical know-how to help them build their farm in that 1,000 square meter lot. So meron ganung business models din. And I, not only to mention OFWs, because like what we said, this webinar is not only for OFWs, but even some friends of mine from the urban dwellers, nag-venture din sila into farming because, as you can see, I even have a direct friend, a close friend na galing siyang Manila. He graduated applied math in UPLB. He had a good job. He's very, in the industry of I think it was business or finance, if I'm not mistaken. But then he went back to his province in Bohol, and he's now farming. So yung tipong he really left the city to go back to Bohol just to farm kasi nakita niya yung opportunity in farming. So that's one thing promising, no, na makikita natin that it's very nice to see that there's a resurgence of interest in farming. And I'd like to highlight that maganda po yung experience from our testimonials from Ma'am Gina and from Rudy, no. They're very promising. Those are models that we would like to replicate and even expand further in our country. Na yung I would even support, no, yung family farming, because the United Nations launched the decade of family farming, and it's important to look at how family farming is a crucial component in achieving sustainable development goals. How family farming is crucial in achieving household food security, household nutrition security. No, so malaking bagay po 'yun. And I think it's really more of how do we tap into the resources that government provides, that civil society and private sector provides, and how do we look at the perfect opportunities in agriculture so that we can be engaged across the food system. So I think it's really the biggest, I think if there's something that I would leave the viewers with, it's really to look at the wider range of opportunities in the food systems rather than just isipin lang natin na farming lang ang agriculture.
Yes, yes. Thank you very much, Jim. That was very encouraging, and it gives us a lot of hope. Incidentally, I'd like to mention that actually Jim and Rude, they're young people that we met when we did this research, trying to explore whether agriculture can be an alternative to international labor migration among young Filipinos. So when we started out with the project, we were quite discouraged because, of course, we see these common statistics that our farmers are aging, that the average age of farmers is like 57 years old to 60 years old. And so we were thinking, oh, what's going to happen? But then along the way, and with the lit review and also meetings with ATI, we got to know young people like Jim, young people like Rude, and others who are actually introducing a lot of innovations in the agriculture sector. So what you mentioned also about perfect is something that we can also have as one of the takeaways from this webinar. But really the idea that agriculture is more than food production is something that we have to appreciate, because indeed there are many aspects. There's the aspect of logistics, there's the aspect of value-added production, which has a lot of potentials. So maraming salamat, Jim. No? I'm afraid that we are actually running out of time. So maybe instead of addressing all of the questions, we will just return to the questions, and we will email you directly or post our responses or the responses of our resource persons to those questions. So please watch out for them. But I'd like to ask maybe all our resource speakers to maybe share some takeaway messages for our audience. So let me begin with Gina. Miss Gina. Unmute. Please unmute, Jane. Oh. Okay. Hindi siya makaano. Dax, maybe you need to unmute Gina. Okay. Some final thoughts?
Ma'am, go ahead po, ma'am.
Jean, baka meron kang final message para sa ating mga participants, maybe a quick message to them.
Okay. Thank you so much for this program. I hope I could also attend more webinar series regarding this agricultural, especially from the DTI here in our region. Thank you so much for this organization so invited me.
Okay. Thank you. Ruth, can we ask for some final
Thank you so
thoughts
much,
from
Mama.
you? Salamat, Jean. Please unmute. Ruth, sandali. Okay. Please
First of
go
all,
ahead.
first of all, Ma'am, I would like to thanks with you, Mama Marla, for always kept in touch with me and to the 4-H organization here in the Philippines. And to Sir Aton, hello po. Nice to see you again, sir. And to Sir Jim, hello, sir. And to all the listeners po sa webinar na to, please ventures into farming because farming is very broad and there is a lot of opportunities na maibibigay sa atin, not just in business but also in our health and to our families also. So, thank you, Ma'am Marla.
Ay, salamat
Regards to
po.
Ma'am Chris. Thank you po.
Okay. Thank you. Yes. Lucy? You have some message, Lucy?
Hello. Yeah, thank you again, everyone. So interesting, this whole topic and all of the sharing that we've heard. And, the main thing that I take away from this is that from the research that we've done, I think we recognize that there are actually resources out there at the different points along the way when families could have the opportunity to turn towards agriculture and also turn even if they do migration to return to agriculture. So I think that it's a very positive story, really, about the possibility, especially in this time, about the way that this pandemic and all of the negative things that are happening could perhaps provide opportunity that would have been not possible maybe in someone's imagination previously. So thanks again.
Thank you, Lucy. Director Aton, some final thoughts? Sir, okay. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you very much for inviting me in this webinar meeting. And sa mga kababayan ko, either nasa abroad pa or nasa Pilipinas na, you can access our e-learning website para pagdating nyo sa Pilipinas, meron na kayong natutunan dyan pa lang sa inyo, or even nandito na kayo, you can open our website para ma-enhance pa rin yung mga knowledge ninyo pertaining sa ating mga tinuturo sa agrikultura. And we believe that agriculture is the backbone of the Philippines. Kung walang agriculture, wala pa, mahina pa, hindi pa kaya ng Pilipinas. Thank you very much.
Indeed. Ma'am Emmeline, your message?
Yes, the ACPC recently partnered with a digital finance and a service provider to provide innovative financial disbursement platforms for our program, particularly the Kaya, the one for the agri-entrepreneurs. So with this digital platform, we hope that we will be able to reach out and convince more Filipino millennials to engage in agriculture, fishery, and agribusiness ventures. And more importantly, for them to bankroll their respective projects, just like Ruth. And also to the OFWs, we hope that we will be able to give their needed business, we will be able to finance their needed for their agri-business ventures with our program on Anyo or Agri-Negosyo. Thank you.
Maraming salamat po. Jim.
Hi, ma'am. Thank you, first of all, for having me here. And it's very nice to see how the Migration Outlook webinar series has turned to also agriculture as one of the prospects for our OFW kababayans. And I think that's very crucial, and this is a very interesting discussion that I hope more of our Filipino kababayans would hear and know about, and especially the younger generation of Filipinos, our younger mga millennials and Gen Zs. Hopefully, they would also look at the perfect opportunities for in agriculture and in the food system. But before I even end, ma'am, I'd like to thank, before I forget, in behalf of my colleagues, Dax, Justin, and myself also, we'd like to thank you, Scalabrini Migration Center, for trusting Dream Agrimedia to co-produce this webinar series with you and the University of Hong Kong and the Episcopalian organization po. Thank you very much po.
Yes. Yes, naunahan mo ako because I also wanted to say that and to mention that we are actually working with young people, young guns, in the agriculture sector, and we are really very happy with this partnership. So we are really very grateful to everyone because it's not very often that the circles, migration circle and the agriculture circle, get to encounter each other and to be on the same table, and we are very happy that. I think we had a wealth of information on the various services and programs that are available. Hindi na po natin kinakailangan pang mag-wonder kung saan tayo kukuha ng mga much needed information na ito. And I guess my one final message also is that we can support agriculture in various ways. We can support agriculture also in our practices as consumers, as producers, as performing other roles in the food system, as Jim has mentioned, and of course as enablers. So maraming salamat po, and I apologize for the extension. So I'd like to turn over the floor to Melissa for the closing part. Thank you.
Marla. So to wrap up the entire webinar series, on behalf of the University of Hong Kong, Scalabrini Migration Center, and the Episcopal Commission for Migrants and Itinerant People, I would like to extend our gratitude to our resource persons, so Ma'am Gina, Sir Rude, Dr. Lucy, Direct Alfredo, Ma'am Emmeline, and Sir Jim. We would also like to thank our tech team for all of our webinars. We have Justin, Dax, and Jim of Dream Agrimedia, and to SMCs Kim and John Paul for assisting with the preparations and technical needs. Thank you also to our viewers who watched and shared their own insights. Also, you may view the recording of this webinar and the 3 other webinars. So all of our webinars are in the Facebook page of SMC. Lastly, please accomplish the feedback form that is posted in the comment section. So thank you very much for joining us in our webinar series. Keep safe and enjoy your weekend.
Okay. Are we all?